It's Spoilerin time, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we will, of course, spoil The Shield, episode 5 of season 5. We will spoil Better Call Saul's finale. We are going to talk about the first episode of Netflix's series Daredevil, but we will start by checking in on the summer movie draft. Brian Brushwood, how are you feeling?
Oh, about the draft? I mean, you're going to win.
No, I just mean in general. How are you? If you're doing okay, you're in a different place. I'm worried about you. You've been traveling.
No, dude, I am ready to rock. I've got 10 megabit internet here at the Rio All Suites Hotel and Casino, which is a fine place to take a vacation if you're going to come to Las Vegas.
You're not, huh? You almost sound like an ad.
No, I'll tell you what's an ad. Is if I were to talk about the amazing deals they have at the Rio All Suites Hotel and Casino.
Try the buffet. That would be
yeah.
10 megabit internet. No kidding. No.
Yeah, well, you could pay for like they got like chump internet for 1.5 megabits, and then if you pay a premium, you get the 10 megabit, which is like totally worth it. It's like $20 a day, but it's like done. And
we are not here to talk about suites in Vegas, though. We are here to talk about spoilers and the movie draft. We start with the movie draft minute.
We gave it like a fake toss to it. Bryce preemptively jumped over to it. But that's all right. So what came out this week, Tom?
Okay. The Paul Blart Mall Cop 2 is coming out. Sorry, I'm messing this all up. Let me just pretend the last 2 minutes didn't happen. Well, right. Brian, Furious 7 has been out. That had a great second week and got Guys from Queens, Andrew Zarian, up to 210,730,000. Out this week was Team Cordkillers, which is not me or Brian, and also only made $5.5 million.
Yeah, is that a limited release thing? Because The Longest Ride had like a lot of like I don't know, arty movie buzz happening for it, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't look that up. Is The Longest Ride in?
I have to guess. That it's limited release right now, but I may be wrong. I don't know.
I don't know, Brian. But it is a really low amount, $550,000 per dollar spent versus Furious 7, which is $5.6 million per dollar spent.
So GFQ spent $37 game dollars to get Furious 7, which I think was a good investment. It's probably looks like it's going to creep up towards $300 million. And in general, to win the game, you want to get close to $1 billion total. So you want to do about, $10 million for every game dollar spent. They're not going to quite get that with Furious 7. However, they only spent $16 on Paul Blart. And I feel like Paul Blart making $100 million is pretty much a slam dunk, right?
Wide release, dude. Wide release, 5.5 million.
Holy crap. The Longest Ride really was wide release?
Yeah.
Malango.
Forbes says there was one new wide release this weekend, and it was the 10th Nicholas Sparks adaptation, The Longest Ride.
Wow. Crazy.
Cinderella made $175 million. That's not in the movie draft. So, yeah. Paul Blart, I don't think it's going to hurt Guys from Queens. It's not going to make their day. Unfriended, I think you might be right. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes in exactly at what $13 is worth, but it could also take off. It's just not a big movie looking time right now, especially when we've got a week off on the movie draft. There is no movie in the movie draft for next week, and then 2 weeks from now is Avengers Age of Ultron. Everybody's saving up their movie theater time for that.
I got to tell you, I'm looking at the rest of GFQ's slate, and they really got a lot of bargains. They're not super sexy movies, but they're all movies that they got great prices on. So I don't know, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. All right, let's start spoilerin'. We start off with Better Call Saul, the finale. I was incredibly curious where they were going to go in this because we talked last week about how the penultimate episode of the season felt like a series finale or a season finale in a lot of ways.
Sure.
I'm going to jump right to the end of this one and say, now I get it. This is definitely the story of how Jimmy McGill breaks bad.
Sell me on it, because to be honest, I'd hate to say it, Tom, I didn't like it. I don't feel like it advanced the story in any way. I didn't feel any supreme tension. We saw a backslide in the narrative arc of Jimmy McGill. I thought that the montage of him, going back with his old buddy, pulling their old cons and stuff was a bit cartoonish, like goofy, just maybe even dumb. I'll say it. It was dumb. It was silly. And I don't think I like this episode. I think this might be my least favorite episode of the entire series so far.
I loved it. It wasn't my favorite episode of the series so far, but I loved the episode. I saw exactly what was going on here. I felt like this was my big question the whole time is like, Jimmy McGill's a good guy. He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to pull himself out from under stuff. I'm not seeing how he becomes Saul here. We got a couple pieces. Yeah, okay, so he knows Mike now, and he got involved with Nacho, but he's pulling away from that. And this is definitely now clear in my mind that his brother is the evil. His brother is the cancer. His brother is the thing that pushes him to say, you know what? Fine. I'm just going to go back to being Slippin' Jimmy. And he goes back to Chicago, and he experiences being Slippin' Jimmy again. And he goes through those tricks. And I actually was curious what you were going to think of that, because I'm like, wow, these are like scam school-ish kind of things. Are they any good? Are they real? Is it cartoonish? So it's interesting to get your feedback.
No. And what's funny is the scams themselves, I mean, they're legit. Like there's a great book called Gotcha, written by like a New York prosecutor, talking about all of these scams and how they work. And these are straight out of the book. And in that regard, I actually dug the fact, the whole, selling the valuable $50, the perception that you're getting something for way more than you should be able to get it for. All of that is textbook. However, the cartoonish, I'm talking to the camera while everything crossfades. I mean, it's like we saw this in Simpsons episodes, right? This is how Family Ties represented a barbershop quartet of girls going on tour, was to show neon signs fading in and out on the sides and stuff. It just felt a little over the top for me. It felt a little silly. And granted, Vince Gilligan will play with stuff that's over the top from time to time. This is just one where it just didn't resonate with me. I wasn't along for the ride.
Totally fair. I was along for the ride. I loved it. I thought it was great. My only question was the one you just answered. And I was like, yeah, what we're seeing is Jimmy McGill going back and realizing that whole part of his life, which maybe felt kind of romanticized now that he was living in Albuquerque trying to be a lawyer, really wasn't that great. It was just a cartoon in his head is kind of the way I took it. And then he wakes up and realizes, like, you know what, I can't go back to being Slippin' Jimmy. I can't go back to this. I see my friend. I see where he's at. I don't want to be there. I want to be something better. And that's why I was trying to be a lawyer. And that's why I was trying to impress my brother and my girlfriend and everyone, and trying to go legit. And guess what? Going legit didn't get me squat. So I'm going to make myself better in the way that is open to me. I'm going to take the money. I don't care about ethics. I am going to take that money and I'm going to do whatever it takes. And that's why, for me, it ended strong. For me, it ended up with him very believably saying, hey, you know what? I'm Slippin' Jimmy no longer, but I am somebody better than that. And I tried to do it the right way, and it didn't work out. I got screwed by my own brother. So I'm just going to do whatever way it takes.
Yeah, Ken from Chicago in the chat points out that the whole, those whole montage sequences were an homage to the 30s and 40s, movies of those nature. Yes, I totally get that. Doesn't necessarily excuse it. And again, not that it needs to be forgiven or anything. It just, when that kind of thing works and you go along for the ride, it's great. It was too much. It was too silly for me, and it took me out of it. So it's like they swung for the fences, and it just didn't connect with me, and that's fine. But
all right, so episode letdown aside, going into season 2, you're very clear. We're all very clear that he is not going to be nice Jimmy anymore. What do you expect to see?
I expect to see, to be honest, a microcosm of what we saw in the very first episode. In the very first episode, we saw him step out of his comfort zone to do what he felt it was obvious he needed to do. And in that case, it was to negotiate for them not to kill for Nacho or whatever, Tuco, not to kill those two, chumps. And it was awkward, and it was great to watch him go through that. But you understood that he has a goal. He wants to see these guys, not killed, and so he steps out and he does it. I expect that we're going to see him, much as we derived a lot of Schadenfreude watching Walter White pretend to play gangster Heisenberg. And at some point, it stopped being a hilarious joke, and he definitely was a real gangster named Heisenberg. I think we're going to see the same thing with Jimmy. I think we're going to watch him awkwardly take steps into becoming Saul Goodman, and at some point, we're going to look up and we're like, oh wow, he truly is a heartless, Machiavellian conniver and somebody willing to do whatever it takes for his client.
Yeah, I'm with you most of the way there. I'm with you almost all the way. I don't think we'll ever see him, because I don't think we ever really saw him in Breaking Bad as heartless. In fact, that's the only thing that I don't see. But Machiavellian, absolutely. Willing to do anything for his client, absolutely. Wanting to save his own skin, absolutely. So yeah, I think you're right. That is where we're going to go. And to me, that's what's interesting is Walter White was someone who always had this inside him. And was trying to pretend like he was doing it for others, and being a good person as he broke bad. And by the way,
it took like 4 seasons for us to realize it was always in Walter White. We spent most of the journey of Breaking Bad thinking much like we currently think of Jimmy McGill. Here's somebody who's weak and disenfranchised, and who has a chance to achieve a little bit of power, and we want to root for him, and then we become horrified midway through the experience.
And with Jimmy, it's not. With Jimmy, he's not somebody. We actually see that he's really not weak anymore. He is not someone who lies to himself. I guess that's the biggest difference. Walter White was lying to himself, and that's why we were fooled in the early parts of this. Jimmy / Saul is very honest with himself at the end of this episode about who he is.
Well, what was it that he said that made it all very clear for you? Because I didn't get that sense that a lot had changed, but it's clear you did.
I don't remember the words, but whatever. At the end, he's like, I've always tried to do the right thing and I've been punished for it. Well, not anymore, essentially. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's the Saul we know. Saul always wants to do what is going to advance him and his client, but he's not evil. He knows exactly who he is. He's not trying to fool anyone unless he's trying to fool someone, right? It's very clear when he's talking BS and when he's like, okay, now we're behind, the closed doors.
Jackie Hearn nails it. The quote was, I know what stopped me. It won't happen again. It's when he says that to Mike, and he essentially lays out like,
oh, right, when he's going out of the garage.
Yeah.
Or the parking lot. Yeah.
Makes sense. And again, I'm still totally on board. It's just that to me, the second to last episode was just light years ahead of this one. This one just felt like it felt unnecessary. It's like I get that they wanted him to go back and be sure about the path he's about to take, but I don't feel like the audience really needed to see this. I think
I loved it. I really enjoyed the episode. I won't disagree that the penultimate episode was better. It was a stronger episode, but I still really enjoyed the trip to Chicago. I thought it was fun.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Let's talk about Daredevil.
Dude, it's I by the numbers, Daredevil has nothing but problems. Standing outside, it's like you're telling me, yes, I get it. It's in the Star Wars. It's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Those are going to cross over. Don't you worry.
Might as well. It's all the same. It's all Disney. It's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The budget will theoretically be lower, of course, than the movies. It's an action hero, but they won't be able to spend money to sell us on the action sequences like they did in the movies. It seems like it's also a less popular character, blah, 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 and yet they nailed it. They figured out that the way to sell Daredevil is to close the scope of everything. Make it a smaller story, but fill that story, as small as its boundaries are, fill it to bursting and sell us on it. And in this case, it turns out that the solution was, how about this? We have a lawyer and we have a corrupt section of New York We have and they don't beat your head over this, but it's very clear that this is a post 9/11 world. The events of the Avengers are essentially a 9/11. So, you deal with the graft and insurance. And essentially what you get is just a really, really good lawyer procedural, well written. With I love Foggy, and the guy who plays Foggy is fantastic. Matt is an interesting character, and oh yeah, by the way, when he's not doing awesome lawyer stuff that you're enjoying, he's kicking ass in a costume. It's brilliant play, well done, and I'm so all the way in.
This to me is everything Powers is not.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So they said, we're not going to do an origin story. We're not going to dress people up in a suit right away. We're going to make you wait for that. We're going to wait till you want to see that suit before we show you that suit. We're going to spend any origin story time we have, we're going to spend on how he was made blind. And we're not even going to do a lot. So we leave some mystery there about how he grew up. We're going to parse that story out. But you nailed it, Brian. Like, what they decided to do is say, hey, guess what? They're lawyers. So this is going to be a lawyer show. This is Boston Legal. This is, right. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to do it really well inside the universe. Because what would be cooler than a lawyer show is a lawyer show where for 5 or 10 minutes every episode, he goes out and kicks people's ass and he's blind. Like, isn't that a great show? Like, yeah, we'll get to Daredevil down the road. Let's do this really well right now.
Well, that's the thing. Is like the show's called Daredevil, yet who would have guessed that the star is Matt Murdock, not Daredevil? Like, Daredevil shows up, but the star is Matt Murdock, and he doesn't. And like, to be honest, he could not be a superhero. You could cut out all of the superhero stuff, and I would just really dig it as a lawyer show about a blind lawyer who has preternatural, observational abilities.
Yeah, it's in the tradition of The Mentalist or Lie to Me. In those ways, it shows how production choices are so important in setting out the boundaries in which you're going to play. I mean, it was great cinematography, great acting, great writing. I don't want to denigrate any of those, but they built the right playground, in my opinion, to start this thing off.
Well, and they also, to me, the hardest thing, and to be honest, like I guarantee you behind the scenes, this is something that the suits wanted a heavy-handed tie-in with the cinematic universe. The fact that there's just like this coy, just a nod to the fact that half of Manhattan got destroyed the other year. That is...
Yeah, what is it? The line was something like, it would be great to see more heroes. That's what got us this opportunity. That's it. That's all you got.
That's it. And it's up to you to piece it all together. And in fact, like Neshcom, Bryce was saying that he didn't even piece that together when he watched it, which makes me so happy. Like the fact that they were able to put stuff in front of us that people will miss. Yes, let's have more tie-ins like that a lot of people will miss. I'm thrilled. I'm very, very optimistic.
And most of the reactions from people who've watched more than the first episode say the same thing. A few people are like, it starts off slow, but it gets going really well. So
not to me, man,
because it didn't start slow for me either.
Yeah. First episode just slayed it right from the beginning. The only thing I'll very, very gently ding it on is that that's awfully convenient that their first client turns out to know how to cook and immediately gets hired by the firm or whatever. Like that's just a little bit TV show-ish. But
wait, she didn't get what? The cooking, I didn't even think about the cooking as being even important. I
don't know. I mean, it's just like, like, hey, you're our first client, but you sure do fit in around here. Why don't you live in our family and, join our,
Well, and I didn't ding it on that, and I probably should. You're right, because as soon as she showed up, I was like, "Oh, so she's that character." she'll end up being. I can't remember her name right now.
Well,
but, yeah.
What's funny is like I didn't even put it together. So the fact that because I didn't see that, like you saw it instantly, like, oh, that's gonna connect. I did not see it instantly. So as a result, when it was it felt shoehorned in the end. Whereas just like, and let's keep her around because for reasons. But again, this is minor nitpicking. On balance,
Anybody
very,
who watched
very
True
happy.
Blood too probably recognized her as Baby Jessica Vampire from True Blood, and I think she showed that she is a fantastic actress because it was hard for me to tell that it was her through part of this, and so they did a good job differentiating her. If you never watched True Blood, you don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really good. All the actors are good in this. Shall we go to episode 5, season 5 of The Shield?
Yes!
Trophy.
This is my favorite part of the week, where Tom relives some of my favorite television memories.
So this is definitely in my top 5 Shield episodes so far.
Okay.
First of all, even the most minor point of this episode is that we learn that Wims has lupus.
Okay, finally we can say that part. And I'm sorry for half spoiling it before, but I assume at this point, like we've already seen Wagenbach like break into her house and see like just everything's a disaster in there, and that she just doesn't have the energy to maintain her own life.
I don't think he ever broke into her house. No.
Okay, well that's coming up. I just spoiled another thing that's going to happen.
That's in fact the opposite of what we get in this episode. In this episode, he happens to look over and see her bottle of pills, and says,
Got it.
makes a remark about prednisone. It's like, hey, prednisone stuff. And she's like, she gets upset at him. He's like, look, you blah, 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 blah. She won't tell him. And so finally at the end of the episode, he writes down on a piece of paper, I'm sorry, I'll stop. And just hands it to her. And she looks at him and says, I have lupus. I've had it for 15 years. I've got family. I deal with it. I need you to be you. And it's a beautiful moment between those two, because you know that Wagenbach just cares about his partner, and she is realizing it. She just doesn't want to bother him. And it's one of those amazing, like, real moments where it's like, God, I've been there. I've been Wagenbach. I've been the guy who's worried about somebody, and they tell me, no, I need you to not be worried about that, because that's what you are to me, is escape from that problem. And I've been the Wims side, where it's like, hey, you know what? I really need a person that I cannot talk about this horrible problem with sometimes. So it's just that is the smallest corner of this entire episode.
This is what's amazing about The Shield, is that you're able to have this patchwork, right? This intersection of all these different stories. Like, what an adorable, tiny little heartfelt moment that is, and yet how not The Shield is that story in that moment.
Yeah. It's amazing. And of course, you do have an entire police procedural separate from that storyline called Wagenbach and Wims Bust the Liars. It seems like every episode. And so there's the one where somebody is driven out to dig a grave, and he jumps out of the car, and then they have to find out who was making him dig the grave, and they find out it was the person who owned this property, and they pull her in, and then they find out, oh, wait a minute, it's not her, it's actually the tenant who killed the real estate owner's lover because she was cheating on him. Anyways, it's an entirely like weird, twisted, crazy mystery story plays out. But the main point of this episode is Vic Mackey plays Kavanaugh. And it's so beautifully done that you see it coming, or at least I did. I'm like, okay, he is saying these things in a bugged room. Because, if you don't remember, Kavanaugh puts a second bug in the softball trophy so he can hear what's being discussed in the strike room. And he is, feeling really good about himself whenever they do the thing with Lem that sends him out of the room so they can have a private conversation. Vic brings the lawyer in, and they talk about needing $10,000. And then Vic sets up a drug deal with some Russians who are dealing drugs that have been killing people because they're mislabeled, and the Russians don't care.
Right.
And Kavanaugh pulls in an entire SWAT team to bust Vic, puts in all this surveillance, and it's a play. Not only is Vic not actually taking money from the Russians to set up a new drug ring, but Vic has actually cleared it with Billings, who's there. And it is a sting to try to get to the Russians' boss so they can bring down a larger Russian empire. So not only does Kavanaugh screw up Vic's deal there, he totally undermines himself. Now it looks like he's going after a good cop, which is exactly what the lawyer told Vic that he needed to do. The lawyer's a little upset that she wasn't brought in on the truth, but Vic tried to massage that. But the best part for me is watching that deal go down, knowing that Vic is not going to get busted by Kavanaugh, but seeing no way that he is going to get off the hook, especially at the point where he shoots one of the people who's supposedly a truck driver from the Garani Trucking Institute that's being pulled in. And I'm like, okay, that guy's not shot. That's the only way this works out, is that guy's not shot. And of course he stands up as soon as Kavanaugh comes busting in. And I'm like jumping out of my chair like, I knew it. But I didn't really know it. I was like, I think that's gotta be, that's the only way. How do they get out of this? And it's just an amazing piece of television.
That's fantastic. You are entering a phase, and I think we've talked about this. I've hinted at it before, but it's like the meta narrative to me that really defines the last two seasons is following Lem's story. And I assume, this one, obviously, I assume Lem was only there for a little bit, but it's like moving
and
forward.
That's one of the brilliances of Vic's plan is on Mike, he tells Lem, oh, you just stay home tonight for this deal, which gives Kavanaugh the extra confidence of like, oh, he's making Lem not be there, so I can't hear the mic. Yeah, okay, definitely it's on.
Right. Well, okay, and in fact, I'm going to stop talking because I might just screw something else up. And dude, I'm thrilled that you enjoyed it.
I mean, I definitely see why people think that season 4 wasn't as good once you've seen season 5, but you need season 4. You need all these seasons. Yeah. And you've said this before, you need to learn these characters and live with them and start to learn about their personalities, because it pays off in spades.
Absolutely. Well, and to be honest, like, I don't know, the clearest example that occurs to me was I spent a long time not understanding why people laughed so much during my stage show, because it's all blood and guts and I'm breaking stuff over my head and so on, and it took me a long time to realize that it's that awkward tension of everybody seeing a nail getting closer and closer to Brian's eye, and then eventually it goes in, and then it's not even a joke, just some kind of self-deprecating comment comes out, and in that moment laughter is the release of that. You need season 4 to heighten all the tension of the chess game happening in order to get the big payoff of season 5, to get these ecstatic moments of release like you're experiencing.
And next week's episode, or the episode that I'm going to watch for next week, was directed by Michael Chiklis, of all things.
Yeah, dude, he got way involved. Yeah. It starts to list him as a executive producer in some of the later seasons. Dude, he bought all the way in.
Yeah. Well, that is it for Spoilerin Time. Thank you, everybody, for supporting Cordkillers and Cordkillers Spoilerin Time at patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll see you next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.